Winning Golf, the Mental Game, with author Dr. Saul Miller, episode 870.
This is Golf Smarter.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, Saul.
It's a pleasure to be here, Fred. Hi.
Hi, it's great to have you on. I'm a sucker for mental game books. I always have been. Clearly, I started a podcast called Golf Smarter, so I was sucked in from the very beginning. And this one is one of the special ones. Congratulations. This book is called Winning Golf, the Mental Game, Creating the Focus, Feeling, and Confidence to Play Consistently Well. I'll hold up the book cover here, but I'll definitely, for the video, I'll put up an image of the book and also on the cover of this week's episode. So you are a sport and performance psychologist, and I'm sure that based on what I read, you don't just work with golfers, do you?
No, I've been working with about 40 different sports for over 40 years. And it's funny because so many friends over the years, I'd written a book on golf, written a book on hockey that was very successful, Hockey Tough, Winning Mental Game. It was actually the only book on hockey and the mental side of the sport. Wow. I wrote a book on cycling, the mental game. I've written books on why teams win. And many friends for years said, Saul, you've got to do a book on golf. It's all about golf is such a mental game. So I finally got around to doing it.
But are you a golfer?
I'm a recreational golfer. I'm not.
We're all recreational. Yes, that's what this show's about.
I'm very recreational.
Does that mean you rarely play?
It means I don't play very often. That's right.
Okay. But still, you found ways to communicate and nail it to golfers in this book.
Well, I've worked with a lot of golfers, and I've worked with golfers who were on the tour, the PGA Tour. I've worked with golfers who were on the lesser tours. I've worked with college golfers. I've worked with youngsters who were aspiring to be NCAA golfers. So I've worked with recreational golfers. So I've worked with golfers with a full range. As a matter of fact, one of my clients, a woman phoned me up one day, and she said, my son is he's a very good golfer, but he's very emotional. He gets emotionally upset. Is that something you could help him with? And I said, absolutely. That's what I do. And then she told me he was 6 years old. And, yeah. And
then you said, maybe not.
No, I said, fine. I said, but, we're working with you and him together. And and it was very interesting. Actually, it worked very well because if he made a bad shot, he got really upset. And what was perhaps worse, Fred, was if he was playing with somebody and they made a bad shot, he got very happy. So we had to explain to him I said, what's your goal? He wants to play on the PGA Tour. And I said, if you want to be a really good golfer and play on the PGA Tour, you have to have control like these golfers have. You have to learn that when you make a bad shot, it happens. You can't get upset. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways that will help you to do that. And because he bought into it. And I really just taught him a couple of things about taking a breath. Just take a breath and think of the next shot you want to make. Where do you want to put the next shot? There's just some very simple stuff. And he was responsive.
Amazing.
But we had to have his mother there. And we had to get his mother to remind him to take a breath and so on. Yeah.
Well, how much, my first thought when you said you wanted to have both of them in the session together is how much work did you have to do on the mother to keep things calm?
Right. Well, you can imagine. I mean, it was part of the issue. So, but I think it was helpful. And I think it was not just helpful for the kid to learn a couple of exercises to give him a little more self-control on the golf course, but this applies to him having more self-control in life.
This is a fascinating approach. I think if we were all kind of not talked down to as a 6-year-old, but introduce this concept, the mental game, as a young person or talk to us as a 6-year-old, it might be a little clearer to us on how to get it to work.
For sure.
We make it so complicated.
Well, I normally don't see anybody less than, 12, 13 years old, because they don't have the emotional control to really manage what we're doing effectively. But I just can't understand why we don't teach some of these fundamental techniques in schools, because what I'm really selling in the book is right focus, right feeling, and right attitude. And there are some very specific techniques that will help you to have the right feeling, the right focus, and the right attitude. And the more you have it, the more consistency you're going to have. And on the golf course, consistency is key. I mean, it's not one good. When I go to play, I can make one good shot occasionally, which sparks me to think I could really play this game, right? And then, of course, I have to really practice my stuff to be, because I don't play that often. Yeah.
So I need clarification here. When you say right focus, right? You had your three rights there. Are we talking right side of the brain or correct?
No, I'm talking correct. But I mean, definitely the brain side, as you know, I mean, the brain side plays a factor. And we write about that in the book.
I know from reading your book.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We talk about the, alpha waves and beta waves. And the more I stress, the more beta is coming in, the more thoughts I'm having. And I've got to be able to moderate that and get back into a flow. And I also want to learn to channel my thinking. It's very interesting that I found that intelligent people have a habit of thinking too much. The thinking is the way we're going to solve our problems. And when you're on the golf course for 3.5, 4 hours for a round of golf, and you're actually only hitting the ball for 25, 30 minutes at most, there's a lot of time for a lot of thinking to be going on there. And we have to learn to manage that.
Well, as a recreational golfer, you'll understand that 3.5 to 4 hours would be a blessing. But for so many of us, especially if we're playing weekend golf at a public golf course, that it's 4.5, 5 hours, 5.5 hours.
Yeah.
And that really can mess with your head, let alone what it does to so many people, their bodies. They just can't go on that long.
Yeah.
Especially if they're sitting in a golf cart or walking or they're carrying. There's always something, but the longer the round goes, the harder it gets on your mind.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, you slip out of a groove, and for some it's stressful. And if you're playing really, really well, you want to keep that flow going. I mean, you don't want to have long periods of having to wait. It's funny, in the book, there's one chapter, I'm sure I call it the Sub 60 Club. And it's the professional golfers who have had rounds of less than 60. And there are two specifically. There's Ryan Gibson, who had the first round ever of 55. And when I was talking to him about it, he was saying that it was kind of a recreational round. I mean, it wasn't a tour round. He's been on the tour. He was playing with friends, and he started off very, very well. I mean, the first time, obviously, he started off brilliantly, and they started on the back nine. So when they came to the first hole, there was a bit of a wait for another group to go through. And he said, just really what we said, he said, when this wait happened, there was like, oh no. He then started reflecting on what he had been doing and hoped he could continue to do it. I mean, the time started to become an interference factor, especially because the first hole on that golf course was a particularly challenging hole. So he started thinking too much, and then he realized what he was doing, and he just shifted over to talking with his golf partners, and the angst changed. But you're right. If there's a break, if it's, get out of the rhythm, then if something good was happening, it can be lost. And if you have some techniques to help you to get back into that good rhythm, the good feeling, and the good thinking process, you're a step ahead of the game.
Well, I'm sure that we have some techniques to discuss, that you have a lot that you're going to help us with. Again, we're talking to Dr. Saul Miller on the book Winning Golf, and we're going to pick that up right after we have this break from one of our sponsors. Right back. We talked about it very briefly a moment ago. I want to talk about the right brain, left brain thing that you have in the book, because it fascinated me on trying to quiet the left side of my brain down. I found that, like, okay, how do I lock that in? So let's dig into this for me, and let's go front to back with this concept.
Well, I think one of the easiest things to do, and one of the most profound and easy things to do, is simply to take a breath. Because breathing does three things. One, it can help you to be more calm and strong at the same time. So if you get into a nice, smooth breathing rhythm, it has the effect of balancing both sides of the brain. And it has the effect of calming down any anxiety one has. You know, there's a graph, I have it in this one. I don't know if this comes across clearly, but there's this graph here. It's like an inverted U function, and it shows the relationship between performance and emotional intensity. And we see with a little bit of a buzz, a little bit of an edge, we're in our optimal zone. But when we start overthinking, when we start creating a little bit more anxiety, our performance starts to tail down. And when it starts to tail down, the tendency for a lot of people is they start to think too much. I mean, they almost exacerbate that situation. So what can I do? If I work with breathing, and the key, just the simplest thing I could share with people is to experience the rhythm of the breath. Just a nice, smooth breathing rhythm. If they can get into the rhythm, it balances left and right hemispheres. It balances alpha. It actually reduces excessive beta thinking, and it gives you a sense of being more calm. And at the same time, you're breathing in energy's flowing through you. In the book, I have the exercise really has three parts, the breathing exercise. First, it's rhythm, just a natural breathing rhythm. Second, it's a little more awareness on the in-breath, drawing energy to you. Wherever you are, there's energy all around. It's drawing energy to you. And the third thing to practice is to imagine that energy flowing down through the shoulders and arms into the hands, practice down into the legs, into the feet, so you're nice, firmly grounded, and energy flowing up into the head and up into the eyes. Now, I'm not expecting people to be doing a serious session of this on the golf course, but if they practice away from the course, this ability to get a nice rhythm flowing and get energy flowing through them. The ball has no energy of its own. It gets its energy from us. And if energy is flowing smoothly through us, that gets translated right through our swing. So we have a higher probability of the ball going where we want it to go. The other thing about breathing that people sometimes don't appreciate is that breathing keeps us in the present. If I'm starting to get anxious, if I'm getting frustrated about a bad shot, that's over, that's past. If I'm worried about the next shot, that's the future. How do I stay in the present? It's this breath. And then it's this breath. So working with my breathing can keep me calmer and strong. It can keep me in the present. And there's also, I always tell people that self-love is what enables us to perform at our best. And the easiest way to love yourself is simply to take a breath. So it's just a really, really good technique. However, we should understand that people tend to do under pressure what they've previously done under pressure. So people who will tense up in a challenging situation will probably do it again, unless they overtrain themselves away from the pressure. So what I'm suggesting is you're at home, not on the golf course, and you spend 10 minutes just doing this exercise. And over time, you build up the habit strength that when you're in a pressure situation, you take a breath and there's something there that really gives you the control.
Fabulous.
And that's just one technique that we're talking about, but it's a core technique and it's applicable in every sport that I work with. And it's interesting. In the book, we talk about winning tennis, and the mental game of tennis and the mental game of golf. And in his books, what he's writing about is how we have self number one and self number two.
We're talking about Tim Gallwey here?
I'm sorry, yes, Tim Gallwey. In Gallwey's books, which I think were brilliant.
Inner Game, right?
The Inner Game of Tennis was his first book, right? 1978 or something like that, long time ago. And then he moved into the Inner Game of Golf, and then he went into the Inner Game of Skiing and so on. But he talks about his fundamental idea, which I think is brilliant, is that we have self one and self two. And if you've played golf for a while, self two kind of almost has a feel for how to hit the ball. Self one is this executor up here, your ego, your superego, which is kind of watching how self two is playing. And self one has a lot of thoughts about what's not, you gotta take the club back slower. No, you gotta do this. Now, be careful about this. And it actually interferes with that smooth flow of energy that we're talking about. It interferes with your instinctive feel for the game. So the question becomes, how do I get quiet self one, this part of me that just thinks it knows exactly what to do and is really interfering with my smooth expression of it? And again, I think breathing is a useful thing, and it's useful to have one or two thoughts sometimes that can help you to remind you to stay with the flow,
I opened up by talking about I'm a junkie and a sucker for this mental game stuff, but I've never read Kim Gallwey's books. And when I came across what you were saying when we were quoting his book in your book, I'm like, okay, I've got to download that book. I've got to get that, have that on my Kindle, just so it's always there and just have that reference point to it. So yeah, that's a definite.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Schifflin, what is her first name? She's just the finest skier, the American skier. I can't remember her first name, but she said one of the books that had been most influential for her was Tim Gallwey's book.
Interesting.
And she's a skier.
I heard it from a lot. Yeah. From a lot of people, people. And that's the other thing about your book that I found really fascinating is that you've talked to a lot of professional golfers, you've talked to a lot of amateur golfers in putting this book together, and so many of the pros talk about breathing.
Oh, absolutely.
You want to talk about techniques, but they all go back to the breathing and getting centered and getting quiet, and how important it is for them to succeed at the highest level.
Well, I think Tom Watson's quote was something like, when I learned to breathe, I learned to win. And Curtis Strange had another quote, equally profound about, breathing is the most important part of the game, or something to that effect. And so, these people just corroborate. They're people who played right on the edge. They were as good as you can be. And it just reinforces their coming to awareness about the importance of it. My gift, or what I'm trying to share with people, is a simple way to move into these key areas. Because I think right focus, I think people should know why they're a good golfer, or what they should know, what their strength is as a golfer. And they should be talking to themselves like that. They should be thinking, yes, I can, rather than I hope and what if. And all these other thoughts.
Yeah. And we have a tendency to default in the other direction and go to the negative places and speed things up, and especially when little things start going wrong.
It's kind of a defensive reflex that we have. It's sort of there to protect us. Everybody says that if we were in really, truly threatening situations, we would be thinking, how can I get out of this, or how can I deal with this? But this is a joyous recreational moment that we're out there and we're thinking, like, what's going on? I mean, how can I correct this? And we're thinking as if we're playing in a war zone, which we're not.
Which we're not.
Which we are if we made it a war zone.
Well, we've just entered the commercial zone, and we're going to take a time out. We'll be back right after this.
Great.
Talk about some of the quotes that are in this book, and there's a lot that jumped out to me, but one that really David Leadbetter's quote here, and it's not so much the mental game, but it really does incorporate all of it. He says, your final goal is to convert your athletic swing to pure instinct rather than conscious thought. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do I make a bumper sticker on that one? Where do I put it? I want a t-shirt with that. Just, pure instinct rather than conscious thought.
Well, there's a number of golfers who say the less I think about it, the better I am.
Yeah.
And
it's been a truth for me too.
Yeah. And so how do we do that? If I am having a lot of thoughts, how do I do that? And again, I think I talk in the book about the release reflex, and that's something I teach people to do, where I actually teach them to create some tension, to release it, and to take a breath. That will clear the screen for a moment, and then you have to put in a thought like, keep it smooth, or yes, I can, or something like that. And learning to do these things, I always say to clients, I'm a pretty smart guy. I know if I go to the gym and I lift weights, what happens? And they say, well, you get stronger. And I said, right, I know that, but I don't go to the gym. So understanding the stuff that I'm writing about, the techniques I'm describing, understanding it, but not doing the work is not good enough. And if I go to the gym once or twice and lift, it doesn't change very much. But if I'm going to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, after a month or two, I'm starting to move the furniture around. And it's the same with this. If you're doing this breathing work, if you're doing the imagery work that we described, because there's a lot of stuff with imagery, after a while, it becomes part of you. And then you have the energy to be dealing with things effectively on the golf course. But you've got to do the work. One part is understanding, and the other part is doing the work. It's like a meditation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you go to the gym once or twice and do some lifting, you're saying not much is going to happen. Oh, no. You're going to be in pain for days if you don't keep
sore. You're right.
You're going to be sore, right? And I think it translates to the same thing. If you just do it once or twice, it's going to work against you, right? Until you keep working on it and becomes more natural in your daily play.
Right. Some people think that the mental game is practiced on the range. I think a lot of the mental game is practiced in your living room.
Oh, yeah. I think that the technique, your physical, mechanical techniques is what happens on the range. But your mental game stuff is you got to do on the golf course and away from it.
Yeah, but Fred, if you're not bringing the right mental, mindset, it's not just mindset, but the mind-body set to what you're doing on the range, you're not practicing things quite the way you should. I do talk about practicing on the range, and I do say that, most people that I watch on the range, they're hitting balls and so on. I say, why not have? Sure, you may want to work on some technical aspect of your swing, which your mechanics, which is fine, but why not pick a spot and step away and step up and create exactly the same pattern you'd have if you were playing on the course? You don't just hit ball after ball after ball. You step away, you see the shot you want to make, you create the trajectory of that shot, you see where it's going to hit, you see where it's going to bounce and where it's going to roll. You get that feeling, you take a swing or two to get the feeling that supports that kind of shot. You address the ball, you take a breath, and then you run your routine. But people don't do on the range. You see, most people are just, which is fine if they're working on a specific mechanical thing. But they often are practicing the same stuff that
we've talked about it so many times on the show, of practicing with a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And I think you change your format a little when you practice with a purpose.
Right. Right. So there are techniques involved that you can provide in this book on doing these various things, from breathing to clearing your mind to getting centered. You want to go over? You want to start talking about some of that?
Well, I mean, if we're talking right focus, I think that I ask people initially to define 4 or 5 strengths that they have, or things that they are working to become, so that you're putting out a positive thought. I hit long off the tee. I hit long off the tee. And you just begin to expect that aspect of yourself. You have those kind of thoughts. I think a big part of positive focus is the imagery component. And of course, it's, everybody understands. You see the shot you want to make. You create the whole aspect of it. You just see how you're going to play it. Are you going to hit it low? Are you going to fade, draw, whatever you're going to do? You see the shot you want to make. You see the trajectory. You see where it's going to land, how it's going to roll, and all of that. Another thing I call stimulating imagery is I ask clients always to pick an animal that would give you the feelings you'd want to have if you were playing great. And it's very interesting. I mean, if I asked you that, Fred, what would you say?
About picking an animal?
Pick an animal that would give you the feelings you'd want to have if you were playing great.
A dog.
What kind of dog?
My dog. I have a golden doodle.
Okay. Now, see, that's very interesting, because 99% of elite athletes pick predators.
Oh, interesting.
And I asked them.
I'm going warm and fuzzy. I'm not going for blood.
I have a story in the book about that. But
tell me, because it's probably why I don't play that. I don't play for blood.
Help you. Absolutely. 99% are picking predators. And I asked them, and of that, probably 2/3 are picking the big cats. They're picking tigers, they're picking lions. You get some people picking wolves, some are picking eagles, and so on. And I ask, what's the difference between the golfer who's the predator and the golfer who's the prey? And they say, well, the predator is assertive. The predator steps up there to make their shot. The prey doesn't want to miss. And there are some people like yourself who may pick something that's a little bit in between. You're picking something that's comfortable.
Yeah.
And I had one golfer, and I describe it in the book, and he picked a dog. And this guy was struggling on one of the lesser tours. Okay. And he began to get into a place where he didn't know if he should continue. I mean, in his life's dream of making it. And he had some anxiety and what have you. And when we went through this process, he said he picked a dog. And I said, okay, what kind of dog? And he said, an old dog. And I said, what breed? And he said, a Labrador retriever. And I said, like your Labradoodle, it's a comfortable dog. He was suggesting he had something with him that was comfortable. And I said, that's fine, but that's not going to get you onto the tour. I want you to think about something else. And he picked a lion.
Oh,
and, it's a different presence. It's not by chance that the best golfer in the world, maybe the best ever, was Tiger Woods.
Good correlation.
It's very interesting. Or,
Yeah.
Jack Nicholas, the golden bear, Greg Norman, the sharp. You don't have any
They're
of
all
these guys
predators.
picking the
Yeah. The
deer,
peacock.
the peacock, exactly.
Well, it's
So,
interesting because I became a pescatarian. I've stopped eating meat. And
yes,
one of the things that I've said about that is we don't eat predators. We eat animals that are grass-fed anyway. So I've just cut out the middleman.
mhm.
And so I'm just eating, things that are replenishable, and I don't have to worry about predators.
Right,
So it's not in
right.
my thought process.
Right. Well, I'm in the same club, dietary club as you, and but I do find that interesting. I mean, sometimes when you talk to people about it, they think, "Well, I don't want to prey on people." I'm not talking about that. I'm
No, no,
talking
no.
about an attitude that the predator has, where they step out to assert themselves. And I say, look, the lion on the savannah is chasing a zebra, and the zebra leaps over a cliff and is gone. What does the lion do? It just turns around and goes for the next one. It's always next shot. It doesn't have negative self-judgment, as far as I know. It doesn't be shaking its head or running negative thoughts. It just goes for the next one. It's always next shot. And the prey is out there continuously. If you watch these animals who are the prey, they're looking around, they're looking for trouble. And so when you have somebody who's thinking of themselves as somebody who's more assertive as opposed to somebody who's playing defensively, and it's funny, I go back to these 2 rounds that I described where these guys were shooting 55. It's amazing. They were just going for it. They were just completely going for it. And they got into that mindset. Now, both of them have had trouble recreating this. They haven't come close to it. But it's that mindset of, you know, I'm going for this. And if you're going for it and you're not interfering, remarkable things can happen.
Wow. That's great. All right. One
Yeah.
more time out. We'll come back. There's some questions about this book. I want to talk about common problems. We'll be right back. You have a section in the book, Saul, about the common problems that are out there, and there's so many of them. Let's go over a couple of them and see if you get to the one that really jumped out to me and I found fascinating. But I want you to start.
Oh, actually, it would help me if I looked at the list. But
That's
is
okay.
that
You can do that.
I
It's in
can do
front of
that?
you.
Yeah, it's right
Yeah,
at
that's
the.
okay. It's an
It's
audio podcast. We can always.
it's right at the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
I list the problem, and it's interesting.
And these are a
Tommy
lot of
Bolt
things you hear people say on the course too, all the time. It's like, I did this. Oh, I did this. And you list them all practically.
swinging too hard,
Yep.
swinging too fast, too quickly, squeezing the club, uh, bringing a negative mindset to the shot, pulling the head out really quickly. I mean, it's almost like
Yeah.
looking for where did that
Yeah.
ball
Lifting
go?
your head. Oh, I lifted my head. Oh boy. I hear
Thinking
that all
too
the time.
much and forgetting to enjoy the game. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's a lot of people.
A lot of people. Yeah.
Practicing over control, trying to over control the shot too, sometimes causes a problem
Yeah.
for
So
people.
let's go over those and how we can correct that stuff. Where do you want to start with that?
Just choose one, and we'll go from there. But I think fundamentally, I'm going to tell you that it's basically the same techniques.
Really?
Because what's common to swinging too hard, swinging too fast, squeezing the club, pulling your head out, all of these things are representing, to me, a lack of confidence. They're like trying too hard. There's anxiety in that. So if I can bring down that level of anxiety so that I'm back into a more smooth flow, I'm in touch with myself, then I have a better chance to be consistent. If I'm squeezing the club, it's an expression of, being too tight. I think there's a comment, I think it was Sam Snead who said, if people try to eat the way they squeeze the club, they'd probably starve to death, you know. And so I think that's what I was trying to get across. If you were looking at the common problems, they were all the more popular problems. They were all had this common thread about anxiety, lack of confidence, tension. And what can we do to change that? Create the good feeling, the clear focus, and we didn't talk at all about right attitude. And there's just a very simple idea that I share in that thing, and that is this idea of use it. If the goal is to be the best you can be, then whatever comes up, you've got to use it. So if you're playing well, you use it to say, yeah, that's me. You reinforce that good feeling. That's the way I do it. That's the way I want to do it. Use it to build your confidence. A lot of people expect if it's okay, that's the way it should be. I should make that shot instead of saying, yeah, that's me, that's me, that's me. If they make a poor shot, instead of getting down on themselves, the thing should be, how can I use that? Is there something to work on? Is there something to work on to improve my game, improve my process? So either you win, you succeed, or you learn if you have a use it mindset. You had a round where you had some great shots, but there were some shots that went awry, and it kind of gave you a poor score on the round. But if you walk away and say, if you have a use it mindset, you look at the good stuff, and then you think, if I work on one or two of these other things, this is really moving in the right direction. Part of right focus is having good goals, having clear goals, and then working to improve, to realize these goals. So it's putting together this whole thing about creating the good feeling. And I think feeling is so important in golf. A clear focus with imagery and positive thought, and this idea of using whatever comes up. Use it to reinforce my sense this is moving in the right direction, or defining one or two things to work on to move things in the right direction, rather than to project it, put it in a negative mindset. I suck, or I can't play with these people, or whatever. I mean, people get so upset in golf. It's just amazing. I mean, the people swear, they throw their clubs. There's one of my friends in the desert in California is a 90-year-old golfer who plays to his. He tells me he plays to his age. He can shoot 3-4 times a week. He plays, and he's shooting 90. Anyway, he when he retired from teaching, he was a wrestling coach in high school. When he retired from teaching, he drove his motorcycle to every state in the U.S., including Alaska, and played golf there. So he is an ardent golfer. And he was talking about his love of the game and how people he's watched over the years, so many outbursts and things. He said one guy one day got so upset, he took his bag and he threw it in the pond at the golf club. And he stalked off to his car, only to realize that he had his car keys in the golf bag.
Oops.
Yeah, but that's that absence of loving the game. And, it's a reflection. It's a challenge. It's beautiful. It's a really, and again, creating the good focus, the good feeling gives you a consistency that you can enjoy the game a little more and certainly play a little better.
Gets under your skin.
Yeah.
And it can hurt. It can hurt like a paper cut.
Yeah.
It really can. And, like a paper cut, which is so minor, things in golf can be so minor and get under your skin.
Yeah.
And hurt you.
As we say, you are, I always begin by saying, the mind is this amazing supercomputer, and you're the boss. And if you don't like how you think, if you don't like how you feel, change the program.
Right.
It's really pretty simple. However, we don't seem to have the technology to do that. And this provides, I think, that technology. And it does it in golf, which is a wonderful recreational and personal challenge. And these techniques apply to everything in life. So if a golfer really wanted to improve his or her game, and they got into this book and they did the stuff that we're saying, I guarantee you that they will improve their golf and they will have more health and enjoyment in life.
We like guarantees.
I guarantee you.
Guarantees it. All right, one more thing about the common problems and then we'll wrap this up. Upper body, lower body.
Oh, yeah. I think it's very interesting. One of the people I spoke with and I worked with years ago was Jim Nelford. And Jim is really a strong advocate that the way we create so much tension with the way this swing is taught, that if we create this tension in the upper body, it translates into stimulating more beta, more thinking. It creates a dis-ease, because really there's ease and dis-ease. And the swing as it's taught for many people is something that creates a twist and an upper tension. And that's creating dis-ease. So he's talking about creating a little more, less getting uptight. I mean, you're physically getting uptight in the way some of these swings are taught and how we feel. If we can bring more flow to it, we're going to feel better in playing it. I know maybe that's too simplified.
And no, but what's the disconnect between the upper and lower parts of the body?
Well, I think he was saying, Jim was saying, because he was a very good multi-sport athlete, he was a very good hockey player. And he said, if you think about most sports, the power is in the lower body. It's like, you watch the pitcher, he's driving the ball. He's like stepping and driving. There's a hip thing. And the batter, it's the same thing. He stays back, he steps in, and he brings his hips through. And that's where the power is. The guy who's throwing, the quarterback is throwing, it's not just an upper arm movement. It's like getting the lower body actively involved. The lower body leads almost. And for some people, that's not the focus in golf. And Jim's feeling was it's not the way golf is taught.
Interesting. I just noticed something really fascinating when you were just describing that last segment. Do you throw with your left hand and play golf and hit, but you play golf right-handed, or you hit a baseball right-handed?
Yes.
I just noticed that the way you were saying, you were like throwing, it's like a pitcher throws or quarterback, you're doing your left hand, but then when you said a batter and a golfer, you went right-handed. I'm like, really? You do that?
Yeah.
How did you end up being a right-handed golfer as a left-hander?
It's just the way I don't know. Somebody
really?
gave me the club. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Photo somewhere around. No, I don't know. I had a photo of me as a kid, and I mean, with the golf club, and that's always the way it was. I never even thought of picking the club up that way.
Wow. I mean, the story of Mickelson, why he is right-handed but plays golf left-handed.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Because when he was a little kid, his father was teaching him how to golf, and his father said, just mirror what I do. So he would stand opposite his father, and his father would swing right-handed, and so he's looking at him, and he would swing left-handed.
Fascinating.
That's how he ended up being a left-handed golfer.
Well, I was just watching the World Series a few weeks ago, and I'm just amazed with the switch hitters. How effectively they can be. Some of these guys are just amazing. They can hit the ball out of the park one way or the other way.
Yep.
And if you start young enough, I'm sure that, and you're reasonably well coordinated, you could do it. I never even thought of playing the other way.
Interesting. I called you out on that one. So there's a quote on the cover of the book from Nancy Lopez that says, this book can help you to strengthen your mental game and play happier, better golf. Again, the book is called Winning Golf, the Mental Game, Creating the Focus, Feeling, and Confidence to Play Consistently Well by Dr. Saul Miller. And I'm sure it's available at wherever you find wherever you find your favorite books. And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, is there a way to do that?
They could email
website?
Me the website or drmiller@saulmiller.com.
And the website is saulmiller.com.
That's right, yeah.
All right.
And just one thought about Nancy. I worked with her very briefly, and just an absolutely wonderful, wonderful lady. And I like the idea that she talks about playing happier, better golf. We didn't say better, happier golf, because of course, if it's better, you're going to be happier. It's happier, better golf.
Yeah. Yeah. That flows a lot better.
Yeah.
And it's all about the flow.
Been
Saul,
a real
it was
pleasure,
great
Fred.
to talk. It's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for your insights and your help.
Change the predator. Change to the predator.